Tucson High, I was a witness to the damage done by this legislature and this governor and their cuts to public education in Arizona. There are 6 counselors for 3,200 kids. 10% of the classrooms are locked away because they're hazardous to inhabit. The average age of their computers is 12 years old, and they have a third of what they need for the students there. The reason I sent my daughter there, and the reason she's done so well, is because of the dedication of her teachers. Teachers are what make the difference. But here, teachers are getting paid last in the country in average salary. And Governor Ducey's solution to 44% of the leaving within 2 years? A 0.4% raise. $15 a month. I had a teacher tell me, boy, I can go to the movies once a month by myself. Well, that's not enough. And we have the money to pay for it. I've been serving in the legislature on the Appropriations Committee, so I know the budget inside out, in the Revenues and Committees, and the Ways and Means in the House, and Finance in the Senate. And I know when Governor Ducey says we don't have the money for public education, he's lying. We have the money. We've chosen to give it away. And what I'm going to do as governor, from day one, with my experience and knowledge of the process, is to take that money back for Arizona school kids. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Farley. Again, jazz hands are okay, but please keep quiet. Mr. Garcia.
Bram, thank you very much. So first off, I need to give a thank you to a few folks. Bram, thank you for taking the time to doing this. Maricopa County Democratic Party, Stephen, Miguel, Hugo, Marisa, fantastic work. You did a phenomenal job pulling this together. Thank you very, very much. And it has been 16 years, is that right, since we've had a debate? That's a long time. And I'd like to say, folks, that it's been fun. Time flies when you're having fun. But we know we've had some lean times as Democrats, haven't we? However, that stops starting right here, right now, folks. That's when it stops. And in order to make that happen, we're going to need to get out there and not just get to people in this room, but to everybody outside this room as well. And so let me tell you just quickly about me and what I'm going to bring both as a person and as a governor. And it really comes down to 3 things. Number 1 is fairness. We live in a state where we're letting inequities just pass and pass by so that those with the least actually are getting the least. What does that mean? It means that we have the bottom 20% of Arizonans are paying some of the highest tax rates in Arizona. We have school tax credits that we know go to rich schools and not to poor schools. And what you're going to get from me is somebody who's going to root out inequity at every single turn in this state. Number 2, integrity. We've also become a state that is one of the most corrupt in the nation. Recent Harvard study ranked us as the most corrupt in the nation. And that is because the powerful are getting their way at the legislature. And what we need to do is create a government that is not for the powerful, but is for the people. And you're going to have somebody who is dedicated to making sure that you have representation, you have something to say in the governor's office, and ending the corruption that, frankly, lands at the governor's door. He's got 6 of his appointees and a close friend who are in legal trouble. And folks, that's not the Arizona that I want to live in and I want my daughters to be part of. And third, service. This is not the next step in a political career for me. This is a working class guy from Mesa who is taking this opportunity because this is what I need to do, this is what we need to do in order to create the Arizona that we know we want to love and call home. And so you're going to see a commitment to service and a commitment for a call to duty become your next governor. Thank you.
And thank you both. Let's start with the questions. President Donald Trump is holding a rally in Phoenix Tuesday. Would you greet the president on the tarmac as governor and say, welcome to Arizona? Or would you get on the phone and tell him not to come? And why? Mr. Farley.
At this point, President Trump is not the president of the United States. He's a cheerleader for white supremacists, and I would not greet him at the airport. I would urge him, like Mayor Stanton did, to not come here to Phoenix, particularly now, in the middle of this, what we have seen in this country, the kind of support he has given to reprehensible, evil people, means that I don't want him stirring up that kind of person here in Arizona. He should stay away.
David Garcia.
There's no question you should stay away. You do not need him on the tarmac. And you don't do that because it's a security issue, folks. We have a powder keg right now in this nation after Charlottesville. And we have a situation where the president is knowingly walking into our state and putting us in a dangerous situation. And so without question, you do not need him at the tarmac. You let him know he is not welcome. You also let him know that the forces, the people behind him, the white supremacists, the racists who have also been pushing his campaign forward, are not welcome in Arizona either.
Big issue right now is Confederate monuments in Arizona. David Garcia, how would you respond to demands to remove all Confederate monuments in the state?
Yeah, Graham. Well, here's the situation. I think we need to continue to remember history. That's very important. But it doesn't necessarily mean we need to revere it. And there's a big difference. Look, folks, we need to remember our history, even the ugly parts of our history. In fact, particularly the ugly parts of our history. Look, it is important for me that my daughters know that their grandfather, when he was young, had to swim in the Gilbert pools on Wednesday, along with the other Mexican kids, because Thursday is when they clean the pool. It is important that they know that. It is important that my daughters know that 100 years ago, we segregated Latino kids because of their language ability. Guess what we still do today? We segregate Latino kids. And so we have to remember those parts of history, or else we are going to repeat them. Now, it does, so to give the hard line here, the situation is if it happened in Arizona, we need to remember it. And there are two instances, Picacho Peak and Dragoon Springs, that happened in Arizona. We need to remember those. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here are folks that have come to Arizona and brought their symbols of oppression and racism and hate and planted them here in our home. And there's where we draw the line. The governor said something interesting. He said, we want to make Arizona a welcoming place for everybody. And much as I agree with that, Arizona should not be a welcoming place for racists, for those who are bringing their symbols of oppression and hatred to Arizona.
All right, now.
Okay, Steve Farley.
These Confederate monuments need to go now. They are not monuments to history. They are monuments to a moment in our history when they were placed in 1943 and 1961. The peak of Jim Crow laws, the peak of racial segregation. They are celebrating the accomplishments of racists. And they are now being used as a rallying point for racists. I do not encourage vandalism, but when that vandalism happened on Wesley Bowen Plaza to that monument that was dedicated by the Daughters of the Confederacy, it should have been taken down, cleaned up, and taken off of permanent display and put into a museum if we want to remember it. Not in public. Imagine if it was the Daughters of the Reich. Imagine what our feelings would be. Well, that's what the feelings are of people whose ancestors were sold into slavery. And we have to respect that, and we have to act accordingly. There is no place for Confederate monuments in the state of Arizona.
That's right. Damn right. Thank you. No hate tonight.
Yeah, please. Polls show about 60% of Americans are okay with the monument. So, would you follow the process that's in place right now to remove a monument from state grounds? Yes or no?
Well, there's some argument of what process is in place right now.
There is a state commission.
There is a state commission, and Governor Ducey says that he has no say over it. Well, he's wrong.
So what would you do?
Your job is to call an immediate emergency meeting of the Legislative Law Commission and direct them, and those are his appointees, direct them to take down that monument immediately. That's the process. You need to start the process, not punt the way that he's done.
David Garcia, what would you do as governor?
Ray, you started off that question with something we hear a lot, and I want to make sure it's clear. I do not follow polls, I follow principles. And our principle is to tear down those monuments so they are not in Arizona. There are processes to do this, I agree with Senator Farley. The governor, if he has the political will, can get this done, and it is something, with your help, we will get done.
All right. Let's move on, and this is a specific question for Senator Farley. The Republican-sponsored Blue Lives Matter bill in the last session of the legislature stiffened penalties for attacks on off-duty officers. Critics say the bill created a false equivalence with Black Lives Matter, and further, there is no evidence of growing attacks on off-duty officers. So how do you explain your yes votes on that bill?
One of the ways I've stayed out of trouble in the legislature is I actually read the language of the bills, regardless of the politics around it. I disagree strongly and urgently with anybody calling that the Blue Lives Matter bill. That was wrong, and completely insulting to the Black Lives Matter movement. I totally understand that. But when you look at the bill itself, it's currently a crime to assault a police officer in uniform while on duty. It makes it an aggravated assault if you assault them because they're a police officer and they're in uniform. To me, if you think about a police officer who's out of uniform, off duty, at her daughter's softball game, and she is targeted specifically for being a cop, then that ought to be aggravated assault also. So I voted based on those facts, and the name Blue Lives Matter is execrable, and I completely disagree with it. But sometimes when you're in the legislature, you can't vote present. You've got to vote yes, you've got to vote no. And when I looked at the facts of the matter, I made the decision to vote yes, because that's what actually is going to have the effect in the future.
David Garcia.
I appreciate you putting these questions back to back, Graham, because they're related to each other. And we need to be absolutely clear with respect to Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter as we are about Confederate monuments. I'm not afraid to say Black Lives Matter, folks.